Hey everyone, welcome to my podcast. This is episode number one today. I'm going to be speaking with and interviewing someone who I've been working with for a little over a year, Kona Lyman, real close friend of mine here on the island of Hawaii, a fellow real estate investor, a father, and someone who's genuinely just trying to grow and better himself in everything in life. So without further ado, let's get him on stage. What's up, bro? How you doing?
What is up, brother? How are you?
I'm doing great, dog. So obviously, kind of just real quick, man, tell us who you are, where you're from, what do you do? Just go from there, man. Just let it rip.
Yeah. So I appreciate the introduction. Yep. My name is Kona and local boy, born and raised in Hawaii. We're on the island of Oahu right now for those that don't know. And growing up here, it's been rough, but fun because it's paradise. But here we are in through adulthood and trying to make a legacy and leave something for my kids. So
Yeah, for sure. So, what do you do now, man? I mentioned a little bit of real estate investing, but specifically, what do you do now? And what did you do previously to lead you towards trying to, invest in real estate through wholesale, fix and flip, whatever the
yeah.
case may be?
So currently, I'm an active investor. So what that means is anything on the fix and flip or wholesaling side. Passive investors are long-term portfolio holders, short-term portfolio holders like Airbnb. I haven't broken into that aspect yet, so I'm still on the active side. Um, my main focus is building capital right now to put that capital into long-term portfolio and ultimately gain that passive income. Um, I started out in the tech industry, so I was in IT for 13 years, and nobody's ever ready to jump into an entrepreneur role. Everybody's like teeter tottering. Oh, I don't know if this is good, and I think the big thing is time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5, and it's about time management. And you have this dream of, oh, I want to start something and build something, but I also have job and a wife and kids and whatnot. And it's never a right time to jump, just like it is never a right time to have a kid. Like you're never going to be fully prepared.
Yeah.
um, so my last role, I was an IT manager um, here at a local company here, and I unfortunately herniated the L4 L5 discs in my spine, and that put me out of commission um, from work. So there's a lot of PT, a lot of recovery, a lot of pain that went through with that, and that's kind of when you and I met. In the same mentorship program, and we ended up meeting in person
Mm-hmm.
um, at a local meetup, and that was super cool. But starting from tech and getting injured, I I look at that as my retirement because if I didn't get injured, I would probably still be a manager in IT and still thinking about jumping into building this business and um, starting the legacy process, which ultimately is a scary jump, but
Mm-hmm.
it was made for me by my back. So, so I
Yeah.
look at it as a solid retirement.
Kind of a blessing in disguise, if you will. Kind of
Yeah,
bittersweet,
yeah,
maybe.
absolutely,
So you mentioned that if it wasn't for that injury, you'd probably be, still working that job, right? What do you
absolutely.
think? What do you think keeps people in the 9 to 5 world just stuck in that 9 to 5 and just, a lot of people say it, right? You and I have heard it. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to own this amount of property. I want to drive this car. I want to do this and that. But their actions, you know, going in the opposite way, and they keep their 9 to 5. What do you think that is?
It's a fear of the unknown. Everybody's afraid of what they don't know, and it's like being a kid, right? You hear a bump in the night, and it's like, oh, is there a monster under my bed?
Mm-hmm.
And not, you get to a point where maybe you're making decent money to pay your bills and put a little bit in savings and go on a vacation every year, but that's just kind of maintaining life. That's not really thriving, right? So everybody, I think, gets caught up in complacency, and I'm a big proponent to, if you're not moving, you're dead. Like, look at the laws of the wild. If a gazelle didn't move as quick as it was every day, it would be lunch, right? So, I mean, obviously, sometimes it becomes lunch, but
Hmm.
uh, nevertheless, the gazelle has to get it moving, right? So, everybody gets complacent, and complacency is ultimately death, in my opinion. So, never get comfortable, and real high level. I think today's education system breeds workers. It doesn't breed entrepreneurship or critical thinkers. It breeds a good workforce, which is not bad. Like, we need a workforce, obviously,
Of
but
course.
we also need entrepreneurs, because the world gets moved and advanced by entrepreneurs. Like, look at all the big guys, right? All the Jeff Bezos, the Elon Musks, like, their advancements in their business and their technology and their IP, like, it just moves everything forward in life and in this world. So I think it's a point to say you have to take a shot on yourself
Hmm.
and not stay complacent, because complacency is nowhere to live life. Like, you got to take a chance.
Absolutely. You know, being active duty military, I see that every day. Some people are just meant, and I say this with the most respectful and sincere manner that I possibly could, but some people are just meant for that 9 to 5. And just like you mentioned, that's not bad. It honestly isn't bad. Because for people like you and I who are, you know, working towards something greater than just sticking to a 9 to 5,
Hmm.
we need those 9 to 5ers, if you will, to
Yep.
do some of the hard work that we are just not, I'm not going to say not willing to do, but we have other priorities to put our focus to, and we need those individuals to do those menial tasks for the salary of whatever the salary may be on an hourly basis, or a yearly salary, whatever the case may be. We need those guys. We need
Yep.
those guys and those girls.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, um, on that note, uh, how is your real estate business going so far since you've been in it? Right. I know you mentioned you and I were in a mentorship together, right? That's how we met, through a
Mhm.
meetup. So just take us through your real estate journey so far.
Yeah, it's been a it's been a long process, man. Real estate investing is a very it's very sexy to a lot of people, because they
Yeah.
see the big numbers. They see the houses, and, oh, I can do interior design work and put these types of finishes in, and they see all the good stuff. Nobody really talks about the bad. Everybody, once they make it, they talk about, oh, I lost 30,000 on my first deal, 100,000 on my first deal, but I learned so much. Like, nobody talks about that in the moment. Everybody
Hmm.
talks about it as my first deal, past tense.
Hmm.
They don't talk about the struggles and the trials and the tribulations they're going through in the moment. So, um, I mean, it's been what, a year and a half since you and I have known each other. So
Yeah.
it's been a while.
I think we
Um,
met like last June or so.
yeah. So yeah, about a year and a half. So wow, time flies, man. So a big part of my company is to help our local families, and the way I approach that is, if I can help a family stay in their property, that's what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
Um, if they're going through foreclosure, pre foreclosure, bankruptcy, fire damage, probate, inheritance, like, there are situations that people either can't afford or they just don't have guidance. I like to come in and offer my services to support them. So, for example, I have a Kaneohe property. um, that was brought to my attention because they were a part of, and it's unfortunate, they owned the property for over 20 years. And the last 2 years, they were a part of a money scheme. So they got mortgage fraud, unfortunately, and they got served court papers and documentation about their foreclosure. And it was kind of getting hit blindside by the situation. Um, and again, local communities here, it's not as fast paced as stateside, right? Everything is conversational first, business second. So a lot of it is they don't know what they don't know, right? And
Mhm.
for this couple here in Kona, they had a beautiful house. It was over 9,000 square feet on a squared out lot, flat lot, on a quiet street, and as a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, beautiful house. It was original condition, but nonetheless took care of the property. It wasn't anything bad. But because they didn't know what they didn't know, they were paying this company for 2 years, thinking they were paying their mortgage, and that wasn't the case. So I stepped in. I provided guidance. They allowed me access to their situation, which included, their financial information, access to their attorney, um, and just overall advice. So I was able to help them avoid Chapter 13, as well as we weren't able to save the property, unfortunately, but we're able to put money in their pocket
Right.
uh, during the disposition process. So instead of them writing a check to get out of this situation, um, they're actually going to get a check, and it's a decent six-figure check. So um, it's way less than what they would have gotten, selling the house regularly, but nonetheless, they're getting
Yeah.
money in their pocket, and they're in retirement, so they need the money, and it's always good that I can try and help in those ways. And when I offer these services, um, I don't normally ask for compensation.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of people are like, well, how do you make money? And the way I approach this business, and one of my business motto is perpetuating our I know one house at a time, is helping the local families staying in their property. And if we can't, how do we help them out of it and put another local family in there as possible,
Mhm.
if possible. And if I can't provide support like I did with this Kaneohe property, an option is obviously to acquire the property from them, putting money in their pocket, and then remodeling, rehabbing the property, bringing the community up in value if it is a distress situation,
Yeah.
and then and then providing the opportunity for another local family as first time homeowners to come in, especially those with like kids and they're starting a family. Hawaii is expensive, man. The median household for single family is in 1.1 million range. Condo is about 500,000 to 600,000. So it's hard, man, here in Hawaii, and the barrier of entry is very high. So there's very few local first time homeowners, and if I can acquire a property, I can control the price. Um, I may not necessarily take the highest offer on the property during disposition. I can take a first time homeowners at asking price if that's the thing, and put another local family in there. So that's one of the houses that we're working on. I do have uh, a Poipu property, which is here on Kauai, um, and that is a short term rental, and the ask on that is very high, in my opinion. But it's a
Mhm.
beautiful townhouse situation. But right on the water, they have a pool that's on the cliff overlooking the water. They see whales and dolphins, and they got a bunch of turtles in the area. It's beautiful. Um, that really isn't a situation where I'm lending support. That's more of a straight transaction.
Mhm.
But there's two properties on the Big Island that one, it's kind of a probate situation. Her parents passed, and she doesn't have guidance. Again, local families. Not to say that they don't know, the process, the procedures. It's just they're not aware of this because we're so different than states.
Mhm.
And she didn't have guidance. So when her parents passed, she couldn't take the property because she didn't know steps to do so. So
Hmm.
we come in, we're working with her, we're working with an attorney, and then working with the attorney general's office because it is court appointed. So that situation's ongoing. Then we have another one who she's in San Francisco and uh, close to her sons, and she's in her 70s, and she loves the property, but she's tired landlord, so to speak. So
Yeah.
she's wanting to get out of that situation. But yeah, man, there's opportunities to help people, and that's where my heart is helping our local community. And even though I don't get paid for it, if they do offer out of the generosity of their heart, then it's much appreciated. But there's never a conversation of compensation when I have the ability to help them because they're going through tough situations, man. They don't need an additional worry. Like they already have to pay an attorney, a retainer, plus you know what I mean. Like it's just a humbug situation. So
Hmm.
if I can come in and support whatever way I can, that's my goal.
I think it definitely pays in terms of word of mouth. Like
Yeah,
that family, that county oil house, being in that unfortunate situation, of being in a mortgage fraud, right? Of paying for 2 years, to an account that wasn't even supposed to be paid to because they got into a very bad situation.
yeah,
And now, being today in a situation where they have to sell their property, like without a doubt, and going from the situation of, having to cut a check, lose their house, and lose everything.
yeah,
Instead, you come in, you provide a much added value in regards to like real estate knowledge and how they could have exited from that property to walking away with a six-figure check. That's huge,
yeah,
you know. And I promise you, that family will be talking about you for the next few years to come, for sure.
yeah.
And anytime they run into a situation with another, someone in close proximity to them, who wants to sell a property, the first person they're going to think of is you. It's like, oh, I got a friend, Kona, who just helped me off out of the worst situation I could have possibly imagined. If you're trying to sell your house, you should go talk to that guy because he knows what he's doing. And
Yeah.
then they'll explain their situation. And
That's the
and
goal,
definitely keep in touch with them too. It's like, hey,
man.
how's it going? It's been 6 months since you sold your property. I hope everything's going well. How is your transition into the new property, so on and so forth, and just build that relationship
Yeah,
that way, and keep them very close to you, because
hmm
even though you didn't receive any sort of monetary compensation, the compensation is much greater in terms of rapport building, relationship building,
hmm
and connecting with other future leads.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because I don't know who they know, right? So
Right.
they could know a bunch of people that need help, and people that may find value in what the service I provide, and that can be compensation down the road. But I don't know, So it's a beautiful thing, man. Just helping
Yeah,
people.
that's why I wanted to bring you on to my little podcast also, because I know you don't really get out there in terms of like social media and
Yeah,
you know, video content. I mean, neither do I. I'm definitely starting, but I know what you do,
yeah,
and even though I know you gave me some, you know, you put up a little walls. I haven't done a deal. I haven't done a deal. What are we going to talk about? This is the stuff that we could talk about
yeah,
right here, and that story that you just told, that's worth something to someone for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely, it was definitely worth something to that family that you helped, cash out a six-figure check. So
yeah. I
I
agree.
wouldn't I wouldn't downplay your abilities to help a real estate situation.
Nah, I
Uh,
appreciate that, man. That's
Absolutely,
yeah,
that's why we're here. Um, and just to touch up on the property and on the Big Island, the the seller and the probate situation. You mentioned that she just didn't know how to deal with that. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do,
hmm
right? In my opinion, I do what I do just to stay informed and to inform others close to me on the possibilities in real estate. Because when you talk to most people, right, what in regards to real estate, what do they usually think when you tell them, "Oh, I'm a real estate investor"? One of the first things they're going to ask you is, "Oh, you're an agent.
Yeah,
Oh, you buy traditional."
yeah,
But you look at them, and with a lot of care in your heart, you tell them that's not even close
yeah.
to what real estate investing is, right? So just to ask you the question, what else can people learn about in real estate just to get started? Or why is it that people just think that real estate investing has to just do with realtors and buying conventional?
I so again, it goes back to not knowing what you don't know. Um, and we had a very unfortunate situation that hit the world,
Hmm.
and everybody should know about it by now. But the Lahaina Maui fires.
Yep.
Um, Personally, my first cousins, they own a lot of land in Lahaina, so they got displaced as well. Um, we had Nawahine on Maui, uh, which is a culture center that got affected, completely burned. All the artifacts, all the history, everything they had was in that property got burned. And when I tell people that I'm an investor, you're right. One of the first things is, oh, you got your real estate license. That's awesome. Like, it's not a licensed position. It's a lot of the same education, maybe not as much for the the state laws, but you get to know it through just being in the business. Um, but with the Maui fire example, not even 2 days after the fire, man, there was a lot of investors. Not like, thankfully, I didn't hear anybody locally that did it. Uh,
Hmm.
Local
I know where
investors,
you're going with this. Yeah.
but there's a lot of stateside investors, a lot of international investors that looked at that as a land grab opportunity. And that's so in Hawaii we call that pilau. That's just foul. Like, you don't. There's displaced families. There's a lot of deaths. There's a lot of missing people, and it's a historic town. And the opportunity may be there down the road in the future, but right now we need to focus on healing, rebuilding, Lahaina, and getting back on the ground. And when I tell people, yeah, I'm a real estate investor, a lot of the negative connotation comes from land grab type situations. Like,
Hmm.
oh, you're talking to a 70-year-old person on a big island about their property, or you're gonna steal it from them. And their family may think that way. Like, oh, my grandma sold the property to you for way below what we could have got, and this, like, they don't maybe understand the full situation.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of education that we can provide when the door and opportunity is there. Because there's a lot of times, I'm calling people, I'm calling property owners, and like, jump on a phone, I'm like, hey, my name is Kona, this and this. And a lot of times we get cussed out,
Hmm.
get hung up on, we get like our time wasted. One guy was like, I'm just here wasting your time. And I was like, okay. So just had a generic conversation with him, because obviously he wasn't in a spot for me to have an investing conversation. But, um, it's a lot of times a negative situation.
Hmm.
Like, you pick up the phone and it's like, hey, my name is Conan from so and so. And immediately there's this lady who was like, listen here, you MFer. Like, I was like, man. She woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But that's the thing. You can't take that personal.
Yep.
You just mark them off the list as a non-compete, and you keep it pushing. But telling people when you're an investor, most of the times it goes one of two ways. Either, oh, hey, you're an agent, conventional, um, or you're scum of the earth because you're stealing property from
Yep.
people. Which I can see from if you're stateside and international investor, and you're not a local investor, you don't understand the the significance of our land here, because land is finite in Hawaii. That's why
Hmm.
it's expensive. So that that mentality, yes, it works stateside, because people are like, oh yeah, I'm just going to offer this, not knowing the situation, or they don't spend the time. Like, for example, that Big Island property, not the probate one, but the one she moved. to San Francisco for better healthcare, be closer to her sons. She
Hmm.
was in her 70s, and she explained to me that she loved the property. Became it's been rented for 20 years, and she just got to a point where she was a tired landlord. And when I talked to her, it was 90 minutes of just her talking
Hmm.
and telling me about the property, and these bushes were planted from the first owner because he worked at the university as a botanist. And it's she gave me her life story of owning that property, and how her mom lived there, and her sister, and this and that. And stateside investors or international investors, they would have zero remorse in that type of situation. They would try and steer the conversation back to the house, the numbers, when's the last time it was renovated? What's the condition of the property? But you got to approach Hawaii specifically with a different mindset,
Hmm.
because I said maybe 4 words. I was like, hey, how's it? My name is Kona, calling you from so and so, and you spoke with my colleague. And immediately she was like, oh yeah. And she laid it all out. And even her, she was like, oh, I'm sorry I'm wasting your time. I was like, you're not wasting my time at all. I appreciate the information, but it's a different mindset out here. But
Yeah, it's more of a of safeguarding, and it's much more precious to the
yeah.
local community here.
Oh yeah.
Not to say that a house isn't precious to someone stateside,
Yeah.
but you definitely get that vibe here on the islands and local.
Absolutely. And to touch a little bit more on, when you tell people you're an investor, and you mentioned the conventional side, um, being an agent, I would say, 80 to 95%, 98% of agents are conventional um, real estate people, right? They deal with one-time homeowner. If they're lucky, two-time homeowner because they bought an
Yeah.
investment property. Um, but as an investor, we I love working with agents. Like, another business partner of mine he's an agent. He's a business partner of mine, and um, it gives me a perspective that I don't have as an investor, but also the opportunity for me to help him understand, like, the different options out there. Right, conventional is not the only way. Like, we can do seller finance. We can do subject to property purchases. We can do cash, quick close purchases. We can do
Hmm.
DSCR loans. Obviously, there's VA loans, FHA loans, and it's just there's a lot of opportunities outside of conventional, and a lot
Yeah.
of ways to structure it. And working with agents, helping them educate themselves on the non-conventional side can be a struggle, because I've gone through, a bunch of different agents, and I have nothing against them. I'm still in contact with them. They're very smart individuals, but again, like, the real estate investing realm is very sexy, right? So when an agent gets in, you get their license, they hang it, they've been in it for a year, they're like, oh, maybe I can work with investors. Because the value with working with an investor, like I said, conventional purchasers once, maybe
Once.
twice. If they're really smart, 3 times. But working with an investor, you're doing 1, 2, 3 deals a month with a good investor, right? And we're repeat business. Working with the same agent, you kind of get to know the workflow, and things become seamless and easy.
Yep.
But there's a lot of legwork for the agent side. So they think it's sexy because they see repeat customers. Like, that's our big pitch. Like, hey, it may be hard working with me, but I'm going to be repeat business. But so there's the value in that. But when you give them opportunities to work on something, it can be overwhelming because you're giving them so many different properties, right? To go and chase. So I don't like to burn bridges that way. And I do know some investors, it's unfortunate to say, but some investors do approach agents that way because we have over 10,000 agents in Hawaii, and although that's a lot, it's not really a lot because word of mouth here spreads like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an agent and you had an investor work with you and burned your bridge because they give you a bunch of stuff and they didn't do anything with you, and then they go try and work with me. I'm like, hey, you heard of this guy? Like, oh yeah, I heard of him. He's the guy that did this, this, and this. And like, I want to work with him because he's this. And you can burn through 10,000 very quickly.
Yeah.
I like I said, I have nothing against with any agent that I tried to connect with in the past. It's just, business is business. I don't take it personal, but I also don't diminish their value as an agent that didn't understand fully what they were getting into. So they're still valuable, and I'll never burn a bridge that way. Because one, that's just not who I am, and two, that's not how I run my business. That's not how I operate.
There's always room to grow.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
not you're not you're not born into real estate, and on day one you know everything about creative finance, sub two, cash offers, the ARV, how to comp properties, how to underwrite a property. Like you don't learn that on day one. It's quite literally impossible. And
Yeah,
even today, as even while you're growing, there's still room to grow, right? Pace
100%.
Morby talks about that, and he mentions. I like how you brought up the real estate, um, the realtor connections, and how you can how word of mouth travels very quickly in any market, especially here in Hawaii, but just in any market in general. And Pace Morby talks about protecting your brand as a real estate investor, as a human being in general, right? But specifically within the real estate community and the real estate investing, realm, because the same concept, right? Word of mouth travels. If you're doing bad business with people
Yeah.
and the slightest comment of just foulness or what's the term I'm trying to use? Just you're just bad. You're just bad at what you do. Malicious intent. That's
Mm,
right, because you could be bad as a real estate investor. You can be bad, right?
yeah.
I'm still growing. I'm bad at a lot of things that I do, right? But the biggest thing is malicious intent for trying to screw people over, double cross or go behind people's backs
Yeah.
and steal leads, steal deals from other people.
Yeah.
That stuff is gonna spread very quickly
Yeah.
because I promise you, and how I've noticed it, right? And almost 2 years of doing real estate investing, like word travels pretty quickly, and you and I both know like things happen, and
Yeah.
within a few weeks, almost everyone knows about it, and it's scary, but at the same time, it's humbling
Yeah.
because it keeps you on your toes. Like
Yeah.
you don't want to screw up for lack of trying,
Mm,
right? If you screw it up, you better make sure that you did everything you can to implement the right procedures and um you know the right protocols to prevent those kinds of situations from happening. And this is real estate. Bad deals are going to happen all the time.
yeah.
But the biggest key is that if you did it with the good intentions, the right intent, and with a great team, then you continue to do the right thing,
Yeah.
and eventually you'll be successful in this business and in any business.
Yep, I agree. I I wholeheartedly agree in that. And I was raised in a way where you mean what you say and you say what you mean, and your word means something. And in today's climate, today's world, that doesn't say much from the generation after ours. And not to say that the generation after ours are bad or anything, but there's less meaning to what you say.
Hmm.
I'm a believer in if I tell you something, I'm gonna do that. Like I give you my word. That's it. And I I don't see that back sometimes. You know what I mean? Like you give all value out and nothing comes back, and you got to be okay with that sometimes.
Hmm.
But education, like you said, having a good team, and I'm a proponent for education. Having different mentorships and stuff. Um, and surround yourself with people who are doing better than yourself. You never want to be the smartest person in the room, and different perspectives, different walks of life. It's all valuable, man. It's all valuable. Never want to write anybody off.
Since entering the this business and real estate investing, you and I have surrounded ourselves with pretty much the same amount of people being here in Hawaii. It's
Hmm.
very it's very amazing and humbling to see where other people come from,
Yeah,
and to see that they were in a position where you and I are right now, to them being where they are currently.
yeah.
And they, when you hear them speak, they admit to themselves like, hey, I'm not even getting started. There's this other person who I've been following and I've been connecting with, and they're doing things at
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z level. And
Yep.
then you look those people up, and they're like, I'm not even there yet, bro. I'm following this guy.
Yep.
And you and I have these conversations all the time.
Yeah.
And this is why I love talking to you, because you and I pretty much, we're on the same vibration. Like we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Um, but like Pace Morby is someone that I talk about all the time, and you
Hmm.
know very well, because I love everything he does. And when
Yeah.
you hear him speak, you think to yourself, this guy's on a whole nother level. He is on a level that I can't imagine myself being. And then when he speaks about someone like Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins, he talks about them the way I talk about Pace Morby, and it's like
No.
there's more.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins are talking about, right? Who are they looking up to? Who
Yeah.
are they a student of? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
Who's
bro.
mentoring them? And
Yeah.
it's like there's always just room to grow, and
100%.
it's amazing to see it. It's very overwhelming, but at
Yeah.
the same time, it's like they're just regular guys and girls. They
Yeah.
really are. You meet them in person, and it's like, dude, your armpits stink, just like mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like you're just a regular ass dude, a regular ass girl.
Yeah.
You put in a lot of work and effort and determination to your craft,
Yeah.
and now you're in a position where you're financially free and you can literally do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a perfect segue. You know what I mean? To what I'm about to ask you. Like, what is your why? Like, why do you do what you do? Why is it that you wake up every morning? You make your cold calls, you make your cold SMS blasting, you follow up with that one difficult lead, whatever the case may be. What is your why?
Two big things. First one is my daughter.
Hmm.
She, we just celebrated her birthday yesterday, actually. So,
Happy
um,
birthday to Blind.
she, yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, she's a bright, beautiful little girl, and she is just I'm in awe at the things that she's capable of. Um, and providing her with the opportunities that I didn't have is a big thing. So that's big why number one. Big why number two is breaking generational curses, because my family is broken beyond. Most typical local families are like this, where the families either got married, divorced, in bad situations. There's maybe alcohol, drug abuse, physical abuse. Thankfully, that was not my case. I just came from a household that my parents were very young when they had me, um, like very young, like teenager type young,
Hmm.
not adults. Excuse me. And my father left because of that, and my grandma raised me, and um, there was no real father figure in my life, and it's just all the men in my life. I love everybody in my family, but a lot of men in my life talked a good talk, but didn't walk the walk that they talked.
Hmm.
And as I got older, I started to realize and formulate things as a man, and my view and my values as a man. Look back and I'm like, okay, you talked something when I was younger, but that's not the case now. Why is that? And I had these conversations with the men in my life now, that were there when I was young, and there's really only one. And I love him, but I'm trying to break generational curses that um, stemmed from beyond me and beyond my mom's generation, maybe even beyond my grandparents' generation. It's like there's a meme out there where it's like this dad is yelling at his kid like, "Hey, you're not worth it. You're not good enough," and then this dad
Mhm.
is yelling at his kids like, "Hey, you'll never be anything," and this and that, and then sorry, pardon me, and then that dad is like a shield for his kids. Like, hey, you can do it. Like that's me. Like I'm trying to stop all the negativity.
Mhm.
I didn't come from an abusive situation. There was no drug or alcohol abuse in the family like that I was exposed to as a kid. So it wasn't like that. It was just a broken family situation. I had everything I needed as a kid. Maybe not everything I wanted, but
Yeah.
providing stuff for my daughter, like because she just turned 5. Having her learn how to type on her own computer, which she got right before she turned 5. Now she has access to a 3D printer, so she can start to explore those things. I would never imagine my life as a child to be where my daughter is. But those are my two big whys. And I don't have a safety net per se, so that's where the grind comes from. And I started working real early, real early. I wanted a pair of shoes when I was in high school.
Mhm.
And so I was at my mom's house and I said, "Hey, mom, can we go get these shoes? How much are they?" They're about $60. Okay, do you have money? I said, "No." Okay, well, you're gonna have to get a job. So my first job, I worked on a farm. This is in Waianae, and I worked on a farm which was next door to us. And I was baling hay. I was taking care of the horses, the pigs. I was feeding chickens, and I was 13 years old, bro. Like, and that family was a family-run farm. They paid me in a personal check, and it's one of those like, hey, don't cash this till Friday. You gotta wait. And like I'll cash it, it'll bounce, and like it was just an interesting situation. But you learn so much at a young age doing that. And from 13, that grind has always been there, whether it was through schoolwork, just thinking about stuff, or getting into cars, now trucks. And it's always like I gotta hustle, dude. I have to. Like I have no fallback plan. I'm not a trust fund baby. My parents weren't well off. Like now I got my daughter. I need to make sure that she's good. And one of my big things is leaving an inheritance to my kids' kids. And it's not to say that I'm going to make them trust fund babies and they're going to be spoiled brats and stuff, because I'm of the generation that hard work and values and all this like plays factors. And if you're not going to abide by these things that I'm teaching you through your life, you're not going to have access to the money that is made over your lifetime.
You
Like
gotta
Shaq,
earn your keep kind of thing.
yeah, Shaq has a very good one where
Mhm.
he says to get any of daddy's cheese, you got to present 3 degrees. So his kids have to get 3 separate degrees to even get an inheritance from their dad, and that's baller, dude. Like to me, that's like you're instilling grind and work ethic, and maybe they're doing it just to get the inheritance, but at the same time, somewhere along the journey, they're gonna click, and it's gonna be like,
Yep.
dang, dude, like I got this degree, and I'm working on this third one, and I was doing it just to do it, but now I'm like, I get it. I can do so many different things with it, and that's the same thing for my daughter. She's not just gonna get handed a pile of money when
Hmm.
she's 18, 21, 35, whatever it is. Whenever I pass, like it's not gonna go all to her. Like there's going to be structures and things in place. There's trust. There's foundations. There's things that are going to be spread. And my attorney likes to call it the dead hand. You're still controlling money and people even after you pass. And that's the structure and things I'm going to be putting in place for my daughter, because she needs to learn hard work ethic,
Hmm.
and not, like I said, not. I'm a big proponent for education, not of school. Because, like we talked about briefly, school prepares you to be a workforce person,
Yep.
and I want her to be a critical thinker.
Yep.
So to do that, I need to make sure she has the ability to do that freely. And if she wants to go to college, perfect. But I'm not going to pay for her college if she wants to go get a language arts degree or a theater degree, like something non tangible. Like if you're gonna go to school, you're gonna learn something that school need. Like you need school, like doctors, lawyers, attorney, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Otherwise, go learn a trade. Trades are most valuable. You need to be a contributing member of society.
Yep.
And I'm not instilling these values in you so you can be a trust fund baby, couch potato, spoiled brat. Because I see too many of that in this society now, and it's not going to happen with my kids. And if God bless me with more than one, a kid, and I'm blessed with another daughter, awesome. If I'm blessed with a son, I get to instill values of a man and not a man in today's society, which men aren't men anymore.
Yeah.
And
You and I have had really good conversations about that specific topic.
yeah,
But I completely agree with what you're saying, man. And your why is very similar to mine and to many others as well.
yeah,
Um, I haven't bared a child yet. They're definitely going to come eventually, and I'm more than certain that that'll elevate my why even further,
yeah,
because of the things that you just highlighted. But similarly to you, I didn't grow up in a rich family at all by any means. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, moved to Massachusetts when we were young. My parents married, or my mom married straight out of high school. My dad was a little bit older than she was, but they had a kid right off the bat, right after marriage, with my older brother. I came in second, and my younger brother was the third one. But growing up, my parents, went to church, went to Christian Pentecostal church.
mm,
So we were surrounded by a lot of the religious talk, and God is coming soon, right? That
yeah,
was pretty much the talk in town, if you will. Um, and a lot of people, looking back on how we were raised, a lot of people really banked on that the coming of Christ, if you will,
mm,
and just refused to push forward with their lives because of that. And not to say that they were bad people or anything, they just didn't didn't progress. They didn't educate themselves. And we were in a situation where we had what we needed, my brothers and I, but we were broke. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Uh, my parents have been happily married for since 1992, so
mm,
31 years now.
yeah,
Long time, right? Happily married. But they're still doing the same things that they did when they were in their 20s, right? My dad has been working, barely has a retirement. My mom doesn't work, stay at home wife, takes care of the kids, barely have a retirement. My parents don't own any property, they just own debt. And at some point, my dad's not going to be able to work, and all they'll have to their name is debt, which will be passed on to myself and my brothers. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And as I've grown older, I've realized that, especially in my time in the Marine Corps, you grow up very fast in the military, like very, very fast.
can you imagine?
Going to boot camp as a 17, 18-year-old for most. I went when I was 19, but as a kid, nonetheless, 19 years old, you're still a kid.
No, yeah,
Um, and having to go through the rigors of boot camp and, pretty much being told what to do, how to do it, at what time to do it, and the consequences of not doing the things that you were told to, the consequences are heavy, mentally, physically, spiritually, right? And for people in the military, you grow up very fast, very, very quickly. And if you don't, you sink. You just don't make it. And I'm very grateful for my time in the military because I have grown up so much. The person that I am today compared to the person I was when I was 19, 18 years old, it's it's ridiculous. Very immature. I was very entitled for sure. Um, when I got my first job, working at McDonald's, I felt very entitled, and I felt like everyone was coming after me. Um,
One of the big things that I don't mean to cut you off, but one of the big things I want to touch base on with you is that you're a sergeant in the Marine Corps, right?
mhm.
And one thing that we've had conversations on before is your people, right? You're not like your people are important to you. Can you talk about why, like why that is coming from?
Why?
Yeah,
Well, it's a thing about selfish and being unselfish at the same time.
mm,
And let me explain that. It's selfish of me to care about my people because when I care about my people and my Marines and my group of guys and girls that work with me, they make my life easy. You know
mm,
what I mean? So it isn't it doesn't cost me anything to take care of my Marines,
yeah,
to make sure that they are set up for success and training them hard, right? It costs me the effort, right? At the very least, it just costs me effort,
yeah,
right? But the back end payment of me working them and instructing them and teaching them and being not strict or, abusive by any means, right? Just being strong and sturdy
yeah,
and very, like, hey, you're going to do it like this. This is why. I'm going to instruct you how to do it. I will walk I will walk you down the way, right? The reason it's very unselfish because once I teach them, then they replace me.
yeah,
And I literally tell them this all the time, right? I tell them it's like I know I'm training you hard. I know you're not getting it right now, and you probably think that I'm just a mean guy, right? But I promise you, I'm doing it for many reasons, for selfish and unselfish reasons. Selfishly because I want you to learn so that you can replace me, so you can be in the position where I am, so you can instruct other people, and I can move forward
mm,
and do bigger and better things, right? Unselfishly because I'm helping you grow. Whether you believe it or not, I am helping you grow to become a
mm,
better instructor, to become a better leader, to become a better man or woman, whatever you want to identify as, so that you can do the things that you truly believe you can do. And a lot of the times they resonate. They resonate with that message 100% of the time,
yeah,
as opposed to just seeing the dickhead version of me,
yeah,
right? It's like, oh, he's just being a dickhead, right? No, I give them both sides. And when you show them the perspective on both ends, they are very receptive, and you earn their respect
yeah.
much quicker than just because you outrank them. They earn your respect because they see that you're putting in the work for them, and not only for them, for yourself as a leader. So
Yeah. See, that's awesome. I remember several times we talked about that, and it's being a leader is not easy by any means, and being a leader in the military is way different than just being a leader of people in a corporation. Um, but there are some similarities to it for sure, and there there are some horrible leaders out there, bro.
yeah,
There's the boss, which is like whipping people like move so I can like not do any work. Like do it, hurry up. And there's people who pour into people as leaders, like true leaders, and that's what you do. You pour into people to make them better, and you're not just whipping them. You're there in the trenches, so to speak. No pun intended, but
yeah.
you're in the trenches with them, kind of working at the same time, and that's what a true leader is, right? You're not
All right.
just
The
doing it.
biggest thing that I've noticed is transparency, honestly,
Yeah.
because your tribe or your group, your crew, whatever you want to call it, right? Your group of people that you work with, they are quite literally a direct representation of who you are as a leader, right?
Hmm.
That goes way further than the work environment. That goes, you know, that goes home with you, with your spouse, with your children, with the people you hold very close.
Yeah.
And you know, leading in the military is not, it's not very different than leading outside, right? Obviously, we fall under, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which allows us to do things that you wouldn't be able to do in the civilian sector, right? With punishment and how you're handling, um, you know, punishment, if you will.
Yeah.
But the soft skills of leadership are all the same,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, and I truly believe that your group of people who you keep very close is a direct representation of who you are as a leader, and the work they produce is an even greater representation of how good a leader you are.
Yep. And it's not just people that you are a leader of. It's also your circle.
Yeah.
Right? You're a byproduct of your circle. So
Hmm.
friends, colleagues, family, even like they all like you have to audit your circle. Like
Yep.
if there's a longtime friend and all they do is party, drink, and do drugs, and they haven't like you've mentioned, in the stateside, certain people don't move, right? They get complacent. You gotta lop that off. You gotta like, boop, sorry, like you don't serve where I'm going, and it's not that you gotta be mean about it or you gotta shun them completely. You're just like not giving them insight or access to you as
Hmm.
as it was before, because
Like
you're
a
a byproduct,
fire,
man.
you got to protect your values and what you
Oh yeah.
stand for, because if not, you become very complacent. And,
Oh yes.
it can lead I'm not going to say it would lead you down the wrong path, because that's severe, right?
Mm,
But it'll steer you away from what you're truly trying to accomplish. And if you have goals and aspirations and deadlines,
yeah.
then hanging out with the right people is extremely crucial. Um, my time in the military in 7.5 years, I know a lot of people. I've met and worked with a lot of people, a lot of very good people, and some not so well, and
Mm,
that's okay. Um, but for those who know me very well, I don't really hang out with many people, especially in the military. When I lived in the barracks, like I was the last person that you saw out in the smoke pit area,
mm,
smoking and joking, having a good time with the boys,
yeah.
just for the sake of it, right? Because there was nothing else to do. I wasn't that guy. And a lot of people respected it. They definitely respected it, because I get a knock on my door every now and then when I lived in the barracks, like, hey, bro, let's go drink. Let's go outside. We got a bunch of drinks. And I will tell them, nah, I'm in my room watching that '70s show. I'd rather do that than
Yeah.
get outrageously drunk with you guys for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Or I'm doing something else. Or simply, nah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And
Because I knew the repercussions of doing those kinds of things, right?
yeah.
That just wasn't me, what I was looking to do. And a lot of people fall into peer pressure, right? Like,
Yeah.
like,
And that's
oh,
what I'm saying. Like, no means no. Like, you're not obligated to provide them a reason. When I say no, that's it. It's like
yeah,
having a kid. Like, I tell you no, you can't eat ice cream for breakfast. I don't need to explain myself. No, like that's it. It's a full sentence. Period. That's it.
yep. It's it's interesting when you grow as a person,
Yeah.
right? And I've seen this with my Marines, with a few of them specifically that I won't mention, but you'll notice how they grow from someone who's immature, just immature with no direction, which again is fine. Um, but they don't know it yet. They don't know it because everyone else is doing the same thing that they're doing, right?
Mm,
Spending the money, going out every weekend, going out, and trying to get with a new girl or guy, right, at the bar, and just that's their main surrounding, right?
That I just thought of an analogy, and I don't know if it works. You tell me if it does. But for that situation where like they go out all the time, they're drinking, they're jumping from girl to girl or guy to guy all the time, like thinking they're having fun, they're partying, whatever. To me, the analogy is that's that frog that you put in cold water pot in a pot and you slowly heat it up. Eventually that frog's gonna die because it's not gonna sense the different the different changes in
Mhm.
their environment, and they're gonna get complacent and eventually die. On the other hand, you take somebody who's forward thinking and critical thinker and they want more out of life and they're already this, and you throw them into a pot of boiling water, they're like, hey, I'm up, I'm out. Like this is
Yeah.
not it. This is not the life. Like you throw them into that kind of scene and
Mhm.
it's just not it. It's just not it.
Yep. It's awesome. I've experienced this a few times now in my career where I get just random messages from people that I've worked with, um, and they're like, "Hey, you probably don't remember me, but what you said on this day helped me steer towards reading this. I'm reading this book now, right? I have two Marines who I work with in Okinawa who are constantly messaging me. One of them specifically, he was really big into anime and like doing. He just liked to draw and to illustrate, right?
Mm.
And he had a huge problem with just being consistent and finding the desire to do the things that he truly wanted to do. And he would talk to me about these things, right? And I helped him discover a few things about himself that helped him progress towards working on that craft. And you know right now he's writing his own manga, and to many people that sounds ridiculous, but to him that is like the most amazing thing that he could have done. And he sends me pictures every now and then of what he's drawing, what the character is, what the powers are, etc., right? And he'll be like, what do you think about this, blue eyes or red eyes or yellow eyes? And I'm into anime, right? Clearly, as All Might is standing right here questioning.
Yeah,
I'll give him some of my input, right? And it's really cool to see that when other people just seek your approval in a way, or seek your guidance. I taught a corpus course not too long ago, and at the end of the corpus course, one of the Marines comes up to me, and he just starts bawling. And he starts telling me about how myself and one of the other instructors you know, helped him restructure his way of thinking, and that the leaders that he had in his shop don't compare to the leadership he received in the 21 days of instruction with myself and a few of the other instructors. And I was like, this is quite uh, humbling. Like I almost cried with him too, because I told him, like, hey man, like, he told me some things, and I told him, like, your past does not matter. What matters is right now, and how you go forward with the things that you learn, and how you position yourself to learn new things and grow from there.
yeah,
And it's really awesome to see that.
love it. I love developing people, bro. So
For sure.
I think that's where I like helping. I think it translated well into my business, helping people, through their trials and tribulations. I feel like I'm developing them, for their future. Like that Kaneohe property, not to bring it back, but um, he's a retired veteran, and now they're going to take that check that they're getting for the property. Their son's in Vegas, and they're going to use that towards a VA property in Vegas, which obviously price points are way lower. You're talking
Mhm.
less than half, way less than half of here.
Yeah,
And with their son and stuff, they're gonna be closer to family, and it's a beautiful thing, man.
yeah. The win is not measured in the compensation that you receive in your pocket. The
Yeah,
win is measured by the effects it has on the people surrounded by you, and how they're affected. That's the winning.
there's a saying, right, that people will never remember what you do for them, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel,
Yeah.
right? And that's a true statement. Like there's certain things like that I live by and how I operate my life and where my values and morals come from. But that one, yeah, like you know, like you could be right 99% of the time. That
Hmm.
1% time you're wrong, they'll never forget it. Like
Hmm.
although you provided so much value, they'll never forget that one thing.
Hmm.
And that's unfortunate. But I
That,
love,
that's true in everything, in business and relationships. I
you
mean, I'm married, so I get a
know,
ear on that 1%, pretty much 100% every day.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I concur with that statement for sure, wholeheartedly. Um, just to bring it back a little bit, I know you mentioned cars, right? And that's
Yes,
one thing.
sir.
That's where you and I connected as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, guys in general, we connect with each other through many streams, right? Through many similarities. But I think one of the biggest connections that I get with a lot of other people, males specifically, not to say that females, I haven't connected with females with in regards to cars, but with males, right? Um, you talk to them about cars and they say what they like, and you get to know,
Mm-hmm.
get to picture what they are through the cars, or what they what they think about a certain car, right?
Yep.
So that's where you and I connected, right? You and I
Yeah.
are
That's
both car
another.
guys.
Yep. That was another one.
So I know you and I have had this conversation before, but since we are recorded, I'm going to ask you,
Yeah.
what is your dream vehicle?
Oh, dude. As in the past, it's a loaded question. Like
It
I
is a loaded question, so you can answer however way you want to. Um, just give me a scenario, your own
yeah,
scenario, why you would pick this car and how you would use it, and
yeah.
why it's your dream car.
There's a flavor of them, and you know,
Flavors indeed.
being a car guy, like it's hard to just pick one. And
Hmm.
like because I just love, like I call myself a petrol head because it's not just cars, like it's bikes, it's trucks, like freaking airplanes, like
Hmm.
it's things that operate on petrol. Like it's man, like I would like to build either an RB or a 2JZ at some point in
Hmm.
my life. Um, you have a rotary, and that's another one, dude. If I'm a large Polynesian mammal, if I could fit comfortably in a rotary, I would definitely want
I
to build
don't
one.
think you would fit in a 1994 RX-7. You're right.
Yeah, that's yeah,
And a
probably
Supra,
not.
I can see it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like it's like I would love to have like an NSX, for example. That's one of the cars that I'm like, damn, that's timeless. But at the same time, it's not really practical. It's just more like, okay, I have it just because I have it. If I'm at that point
Yeah.
in life, but practicality. I moved from cars in like starting a car club and being that car guy into truck. And starting a truck club here in Hawaii, and like I have an appreciation. So there's a few, like there's a they stopped making them, but Cadillac had a CTS V5 Blackwing and
Hmm.
supercharged V8, like family car sedan. Is nice. It sounds
Family car, yeah.
amazing. I would definitely have either a truck, like a Tundra, and like some sort of like family Sequoia type or a 4Runner type truck. But every once in a while, you want to take the wife out on town, or you want to show up to a meeting and something nice. I think like a Rolls Royce Cullinan. I'm a big fan of just that entire SUV. Like it's a floating yacht, and that thing is beautiful.
A,
Um,
a big
but
vehicle for a big man, for sure.
there's flavors, man, to what it is, and I never looked and I never looked at Porsche as one of the cars or manufacturers that I would align myself with, But more and more that we talk about Porsche, because you're a very, very big Porsche fan. And, we went to the Porsche dealership,
Mhm.
and got to see them up close and in person. And like, it's a driver's car. And the more I realize that, the more I come to appreciate what Porsche is. And, like Ferrari and Lamborghini, those are really stunt vehicles. Like, you stunt on people when you pull that out. And, we have somebody that we both know here locally who's in our space that, just recently bought one. And it's cool seeing out there, but it's different when you're a driver. Like,
Mhm.
you and I are both drivers. We're car people. We like to feel the vehicle
Mhm.
versus somebody who has money and wants to buy a car. It's
Mhm.
it's a different experience. So I've come to grow more and more to respect Porsche and its heritage. Um, so that it would definitely be on my list, uh,
Yeah.
of cars to obtain, man.
Yeah.
That's
You mentioned that, man. Like, I've graduated, and as I grow older, my list of dream car graduates into a more mature car, if you will.
yeah,
But I remember early on in my Marine Corps career, I've always been a car guy since I was very young, right? That's how it starts, right? For young boys and girls, right? Starts off very young. Whether your uncle owned a fastback Mustang that he would pull up every now and then, and he would turn it on, and you're like, "What is that?"
yeah,
Or through some other means, like a video game, right? That was me and my brothers, right? My brothers and I played Gran Turismo when we were young
mm,
on the PlayStation, right?
there you go.
And that was that was the cream of the crop at that time in terms of video games and car games, right? Um, and that's how we got the knowledge and the passion for cars through that video game. Um, but where I grew up, there wasn't very much of a car scene in Massachusetts. The car scene that we had was little double overhead cam Honda Civics with a straight pipe that made a bunch of noise at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was our car scene. Um, then I joined the Marine Corps, and as you know, my first duty station was Okinawa, Japan, and I love telling this story so much. The story of when I fell in love with the RX-7. Um, I get to Okinawa, Japan in April of 2017. And when you get to Japan at that time, you go through an orientation. So a lot of people arrive. We all get situated in a designated location, and we get pretty much classes on how to conduct ourselves as service members in a foreign country, right? Because for a lot of us, it's the very first time we've stepped away from home, right?
Yeah.
A lot of 18, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, and their very first time leaving their state or their hometown
Yeah.
is Okinawa, Japan,
International. Yeah.
which is so
Culture.
absurd to think of, right?
Yeah.
And I remember standing out in formation, and our platoon sergeant arrives, and guess what vehicle?
All
It
right.
was, it was a 1999 spec RX-7 in black with TE-37s, the 99 spec wing, 99 spec everything.
Okay.
And I remember looking at it and thinking to myself, that is the very first time I've seen an RX-7 FD, and I have immediately fallen in love with this car.
Mm. So
Even
you
it,
fell in love visually then?
yes, I
Wow.
fell in love with it visually. Um, and I looked at it after formation was called. I looked at it. I walked towards the car, and I literally marveled at the car like a fucking child. And I spoke with the sergeant. I'm like, "This is your car?" He's like, "Yeah, it's my car. I bought it like a year and a half ago." Um, he talked to me about the car. At the time, I didn't know really much about the internals. I know about the external, right? Oh, that's a Mazda RX-7. It looks like it's an FD, clearly, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I know today.
Hmm.
And within the next few days, I was addicted. I bought the Wankel rotary engine book. I learned everything I needed to learn about the twin turbo setup that I had. Um, and I just went, you know, I just went all the way in terms of knowing the ins and outs of about this car. And I told myself, I'm gonna buy this car eventually.
Yeah.
At one point, I will buy this car. Fast forward 3.5 years later, I finally bought it.
There you go.
Finally bought
Beautiful
it.
thing. Beautiful thing when you work on something for so long and you
Yeah.
finally achieve it. Like I'm a big visual person because just some designs are just timeless. They're classic. Like the NSX. Like I think that's a classic look from the old originals to even now the NSX. A little bit more modern, different take, but I think it's still classic. But the one
Yeah.
thing that gets me is how it sounds.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned a fastback Mustang, and to go back to an earlier point you made, it starts as kids, and my family are racers. Like my grandma and grandpa raced when Hawaii Raceway was open here in Campbell Industrial, and my grandma had a '69 fastback Mustang. My mom didn't race, uh, structurally, but you roadway speeding is
I know what you're talking about. Absolutely.
um and the I've always been around cars. Like where I grew up, my uncles were into VWs, so there was the VW Bug Club, and I have pictures of me on my uncle's lap standing up when I was a baby, holding the steering wheel in this emerald green Bug, and that's where it started. And I had family that owned mini trucks, and I didn't realize this was a scene, but apparently they had dump beds back in the day. I didn't really realize that until I was older, and seeing the videos from the late '80s, early '90s, and the dump beds, and they're just driving around. It's kind of like when you see hydraulic cars and they're cruising, but it's just
Hmm.
the bed of the truck that's doing that. That's dope. Like it's interesting, but being around that and being around my grandpa racing, my grandma racing, uh, and then my mom's longtime boyfriend at the time. I was young when they met, but he's the one that kind of taught me how to work on engines, and he primarily worked on drag engines. Like that was his specialty. He built dragster engines and funny car engines, and at the shop that him and his dad owned, I was younger than 13 when I started working. I was like 9 maybe, and he's teaching me how to bore heads and put them in the sandblast machine and the importance of working with solvent and all of this stuff, and how to measure things. So that's all these little like rulers on this thing, and I was like, well, what are these little like things? They're so small. Is it piston rings and that part? And it's just I I'm a very critical, analytical person, and I love to take shit apart and put them
Hmm.
back together. And I think that started at that age, seeing the engine on the engine stand, and then we're taking things off of it, and just what each component does, and putting it back together after we,
Yeah.
you know, made the
It isn't
changes.
enough. It isn't enough to know that an engine powers a car.
Yeah,
You have to know why.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
how is the fuel injected?
Oh yeah, dude.
Why is everything working the way that it is? Why are
No,
some why are some cars more powerful than others?
dude.
What's a four
It's
liter versus a 6 liter? I don't know the difference. What's the
and
displacement?
and and the going back to the way a car sounds is the way it makes me feel, like not like emotionally feel, physically. Like you you let a funny car, a dragster, run down the strip, you feel that in your chest. Like it's just something else. And that's one of my things. I was like, I wish my daughter, like I wish we still had Raceway open, because like dude, we would be like, I remember the nights, dirty ass track food, in a flannel jacket, sitting on these uncomfortable aluminum bleachers. But just as a kid, man, with the headphones on, and they're doing 8-second passes. Oh
Yeah.
my god, dude.
What would you
Oh,
say? What would you say? What car has the best sound you've ever? Um, I'm not gonna say ever heard, but like that you just feel it in your soul so much. That
oh,
I have
dude,
one car in my head, and it's an easy one, right?
there's I love so many sounds. Um, but a cammed LS1 sounds that choppy, that
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Oh my dude, that's a beautiful sound. But even like a rotary, brap, 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 like I'm just like, oh my god, so good.
There's a. I remember when I first heard the car. I haven't seen the car in person. It's one of my favorite cars ever. The Lexus LFA
Yeah,
has one of the most beautiful sounding. It's one of the most beautiful sounding cars ever. The
yeah,
Lexus LFA. And the car was made bespoke for it to sound that way,
yeah,
which is incredible to just think. Every component on that car was made for that car.
yeah,
Nothing else.
yeah.
Like except for the key fob. The key fob is a Lexus key fob. But everything else is LFA designed. And when you see the videos and you see people driving the cars, they all say the same thing, right? It's the most amazing driving experience that they have experienced
Yeah,
ever. And I just think to myself, it's like I would love to experience that myself. And
yeah,
right now, those cars are selling for just about $800,000.
yeah.
Um, but they're just pieces of art, engineering masterpiece that I
Mhm.
just need to experience myself. And at that Porsche event at Rennsport for the 75th anniversary, I got a glimpse of what um, masterful engineering looks like, feels like, and I knew that it would happen before I went, which is why I wanted to go. And now that I've gone, I have experienced my love for Porsche. I can
Mhm.
wholeheartedly confirm that I am in love with the brand of Porsche. I really am. I got to see some things that I never thought I'd see. Um, I've never seen a hypercar in my life, and I got to see multiple hypercars. The 918 Spider, right?
Oh,
Also on my list of dream cars, right? The Carrera GT, a Porsche 595. Like, these are cars that you don't see every day,
yeah.
and there were lines of them.
To the average person, like when they look at a Porsche, like, ah, it's just another Porsche.
Yeah, to an
They
average person,
don't realize, yeah,
you'd look at that Porsche and be like, "Oh, that's just a Porsche." My aunt has a Porsche Macan,
yeah,
and it's like your aunt doesn't have what, not even close, right? I think that's the beautiful part about Porsche, right?
yeah.
Because it's a very specific community. Nothing against uh, Lamborghini or Ferrari, but like you mentioned earlier, it's a very stunting kind of car. It's like,
Yeah,
oh shit, you got a Ferrari. What,
yeah,
what can you tell me about the car? I don't know.
yeah.
It's a
They read
Ferrari.
the owner's manual. That's about
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
I'm right there with you, dude. Like there's there's sound. So like the LFA, for example, like the engineering and the amount of R&D that went into that car is not appreciated more.
It's
The
not.
LFA is an amazing sounding vehicle, and this was built in. You're talking more than 12, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
Like it's wild to think that engineering, and where would they be now if they did it again?
Yeah,
And
that car actually failed, right? That car did not make money when it sold.
yeah, that's why they stopped.
Well, but that wasn't the case. That wasn't the purpose behind building the car.
Yeah,
Toyota knew what they were doing. They were like, we're probably gonna lose money, but show the world that Toyota is not just a brand that your local neighbor or your mom and dad
Grandpa
buy,
drives.
right? We don't make Camrys,
Yeah,
okay? We
yeah,
don't just make your Lexus IS, right, model.
yeah.
We make supercars. We make engineering masterpieces that took 7 years to just think of to before even beginning, production.
Yeah.
And
The,
when you look into the LFA and the story behind it, it's quite remarkable.
the
And
way the way people look at vehicles in general, where we live. There's a couple things I want to touch on, but we live in such a consumer-based society now,
yeah,
where cars are just bought and not thought of. And that's where, being a car guy, we can appreciate the different cars and the ingenuity and the time it takes to build not bought, you know what I mean, that type of thing. But it's, even if you buy a vehicle like a 992 GTR 3 or whatever it is, even if you buy it, you could have money just to say, you know what, I bought it just because I have. But more likely than not, you buy that type of vehicle because you understand what you're purchasing. But like, the average person just consumes, and it's not a thing that I like. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm just gonna buy a Corolla, use it, and then throw it away and go buy another Corolla or whatever it is. It's just, consumer base is ridiculous. The second thing is, like, you going back to sound. Cadillac makes one of the more recent exhaust notes that I've been impressed with. And I can't remember the circuit that it runs, but there's a bump start car, and I can't for the love of me remember what it is. But basically, it's a hybrid electric engine
hmm
for the pit lane, and after, I think it's like 30 miles an hour or whatever it is, the V8 kicks in, and the bump starts. They compare, BMW and Porsche and Cadillac and all these different brands, and Cadillac has some of the most insane sounding exhaust notes. Even like the standard, like the CTS V5 Blackwing. Part of the reason why I wanted it is because of the exhaust.
hmm
Like, it's a supercharged V8 sedan, grocery getter. But if you get on it, like, you're gonna spank a lot of people, dude. And the Escalade, same thing. Like, the exhaust notes are amazing, but the movement now is EV. And as a car person, I don't like it.
I mean, it has its benefits, right? And pretty much torque at every range, especially the low end torque, it's ridiculous, which is why you get these hybrid cars where it's part gas and part electric, like the 918 Spider.
Yeah,
The reason why that car is so fast is because, aside from the engine that it has, I believe it's a V8 supercharged. I think. Don't quote me on that. It's part electric, and that electric engine fills in the gaps where the torque isn't matching, and that car can pretty much has torque at every level
yeah.
through 9,000 RPM.
The
And when you
power
think about
band
that,
is ridiculous. Yeah,
and that's the difference between a supercar and a hypercar.
yeah. And that's oh my god, dude. Like, I I don't like EV in the push that it's being in today's society, because our infrastructure, we're not set up to support EV, first of all. And the number one thing in an EV vehicle is cobalt. People think it's lithium, but it's cobalt. And cobalt is a finite material, and you gotta dig it up and cause a whole bunch of this. There's no real, sorry, this might sound political, and I don't mean to go there, but there's no real sustainability movement. People talk about wind farms and solar and all electric and all this stuff, but if you look at the actual infrastructure, like here in Hawaii, in Kahuku, there's the wind farm, the turbines, but those giant turbines, after they're decommissioned, they just sit in a landfill. They just sit like there's. I gotta find the documentary to send it to you, but they're not done with it. They just sit in a field and they leak into the ground and that's it. Like there's no repurposing, so there's no true like sustainable energy, renewable energy. Like somebody has to come out with something that's actually renewable, because these batteries, like they're starting to recycle the lithium batteries from EV vehicles, which is great,
Mm-hmm.
but our resources and infrastructure and all of that is not set up to support it. Like there's trucking companies that have EV trucks now, and those EV trucks, like you got companies asking, can I get 6 megawatts of power to my facility so I can charge my fleet of trucks? And they're like, the state is like, 6 megawatt. What are you talking about? The plant that produced the truck is a 2 megawatt plant, and you want 6? We can't provide you this. You're consuming more energy than the entire county or the entire state of that area. Like it's wild. So I'm not a proponent of electric vehicles. It's not truly carbon neutral. That's why. So I'll still stick to my petrol head. They're trying to ban it by 2035, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to a point where I can acquire some stuff and just be like a Jay Leno or a Jersey and start to acquire some of these vehicles before
Yep.
they're no longer available.
Anyway, bro, I think we're gonna wrap it up for sure.
Yeah,
It's a great conversation that we had.
absolutely, man. I
Uh,
appreciate it.
for those who don't follow you or don't know who you are, where can people find Mr. Kona Lyman?
Just like it says here, Pomaika Property Solutions. Don't include the apostrophe in social media. Obviously, it's not going to work. But at Pomaika Property Solutions, you'll find me on Instagram. You'll notice that there's no content there yet, but my link tree is there, all my contact information. If you want to, send me a text, an email, refer somebody for help if they need support in their real estate ventures. But yeah, that's my
On
plug.
all islands. All islands, yeah. You do business on all islands of Hawaii.
I do all 4 major counties, and if I can help, I'll definitely do it. And if I can't help, I know a network of people who probably can. So we can make it happen one way or another.
Absolutely. All right, guys. For those of you who tuned in for this entire conversation, I appreciate you guys. Links to Kona's social media platforms will be in the description below. Like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys and see you on the next one.
All right, cheers.